The majority of us go through the educational system and life and never learn what's right for us. Maybe it's time for you to create your own definition of success. And that's where we come in. This is the SUCCESSology podcast, here to supplement the traditional education system and life with real-world skills and knowledge, helping you create your own definition of success. SUCCESSology. Here's your host, Rajdeep Singh.
So just diversify just 2 or 3 areas within your realm, for example, like 2 or 3 areas. Like if you're, for example, if you are now in HR, like you need to, in marketing, you need to understand behavioral science, you need to understand psychology. That's what's going to make you different from every other digital marketing person out there, right? Like how can you develop personalized approach to your customers, right? If you're in HR, you need to understand how AI, you need to know how to program AI, you need to know how to work with it in a way that it's going to, how can you use technology to make your recruitment process smoother, right? So if you're not doing that as an HR person,
you lose the competitive edge.
Exactly. And if you're just an HR that's like payroll, it's not enough. You're losing your competitive edge, and the likelihood is you're not going to make it past a certain level of your career. That's a fact. And some people say, well, that's just too much. Like, do we just do everything? And my answer is, at some point, yes. Like, if you want to succeed, if you want to reach wherever you want, the competition is too high. The competition is too high, and you need to make time for these things. And when we do productivity sessions with my startup, Bessern, what we do is that when we start breaking down people's days in terms of what they spend their time on, we spend a lot of time procrastinating and doing things we shouldn't be doing that's not really leading to our goals. And that's because it's associated with the way our brain operates, because we usually procrastinate because it's an emotional thing. We don't want to, it's not because we're lazy. That's what people say, like, oh, it's because you're lazy or you can't focus. No, it's because you're just, there's a lot of emotions that go into doing a particular task, and you're maybe it's a fear of something, or you don't know something, so you start to procrastinate.
Sure.
So it's about making time for these things.
And that's brilliant. I love the fact that you brought in how you need to make time for things that matter to you in your industry. So I did an episode with Hala Taha, and she hosts the Apple Top 10 Young and Profiting podcast, right? And she, apart from podcast, she has a full-time job. She has a freelance marketing project. She has a marketing company now, and she's involved in 3 other things, like managing interns for the podcast and so much more. So her advice was, and I did a video on this on my LinkedIn as well, it's instead of using busyness as a proxy for productivity, you need to start figuring out exactly where you're spending your time and avoid wasting your time. It's just as simple. So just analyze your day from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. Where is your time exactly going? And I'm sure, like, before starting the podcast, I was working on a startup, and I was like, do I have time for a podcast? Do I have time for, say, LinkedIn 52-week challenge? And then I remembered the episode, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, let's see where I'm spending time. I figured out not only can I, do work on the startup, I can do the podcast, I can do the LinkedIn 52-week challenge. I can also, research about a book that I want to write. I can also, start the online courses that I want to do. So we all have the same amount of time. It's just how proactive you are with your time. That's what really makes a difference. So I love that.
And what's interesting is that also it's people think that, and this is where the brain science comes in a bit, right? So people think that when we have something to achieve, it needs to be this big thing and etc. And the goal can begin, the dream can be big, right? Like, I'm a total advocate, like, dream big. But then when you're looking at realistically, can you reach this dream, you need to break it down to small pieces. And when we're talking about tasks like productivity, right? It's literally scheduling like 1 hour a day for this particular thing and making time for specific things. And it can be literally increments of like 20, 30 minutes. And that adds up big time. And there are times, and there's, I don't really believe in necessarily balance, I just believe in priorities. And something I heard yesterday, and I just loved it, Mark Cuban, somebody asked him, I think it was one of his Twitter things, And somebody asked him, you know, how do you balance the work-life balance being a business person? He said, you don't. He was like, when I was starting off on my business, he was like, I was working 17 days a week, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? But now, he said, now I'm comfortable, I'm rich, and I can spend time with my kids whenever I want to. But he said, but when I was starting off, right? So we need to understand that there's certain priorities in our lives, and this goes back to, you know, what are you spending your time on? Because time goes by like this, and it's a matter of, you know, where are you in your life? And when I meet these mid-level to senior level professionals, and they're not where they are, they want to be in their life because they never made time. And I'm talking 30 minutes a day, an hour a week, 2 hours a week. It doesn't need to be this gigantic changes because our brain doesn't register that big of a change anyway. It's too much, it's too heavy. So increments, small daily habits and routines, that is how you stay consistent. And if you stay consistent and disciplined, you will reach your goals.
It's just as simple. But, you know, there's a quote which said, we underestimate our ability to do work in a month, and we always overestimate our ability to do work in a day. You know what I mean? So we think, okay, in one day I'm going to achieve everything. And then, but if you look at the long-term perspective, you know, you want to take in the long-term perspective because that's when you make any progress. But if you're in anything for like, say, my podcast, I'm being very honest, I get like 30-40 listens an episode, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start making 50,000 you know, downloads and everything. It just doesn't work like that. You know, you have to have a long-term perspective, otherwise you give up.
Exactly. You need to focus on progress over perfection. And it's just anything else. It's just when you go to the gym, you're not going to see results in a month or 2 months. And this goes back to self-awareness, because another point I've noticed about the individuals I work with is that we focus on the wrong goals. We don't know why we're setting specific goals. They're usually driven from external, like extrinsic motivation. It's not internal. And this is a big challenge. And that's because, again, it goes back to the education system, which is an issue, right? Because we're told what to do, how to do it, etc. But we're not, or, you know, answers were continuously given to us. And then you get into the workplace, and then your boss is sort of telling you, you know, in a way, like, this is what I need from you. So we never take time and say, what do I want?
Why should I do it? You know, the what and how is always told to us. The why, we never figure it out. So, you know, we also discussed, like, there's a big disconnect between the theory and the real life. So what is your advice for, say, students to sort of ensure that they start solving real world problems and engage in, say, meaningful and relevant work that will benefit them when they enter the real world?
Sure, so experiment. If I were to put, like, just experiment. I really think there's magic in just experimenting. And if you don't know what you want to do, think about what you like. Just start basics. Like, what is it that you like? Like, just, you know, throw like a bunch of Post-its, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, write down everything that you like to do, and then see where can you do it, where can you add value, who can you spend time with. And you're not too busy. Like, this is what I want to tell you. You're not too busy, right? And if you are busy, I would just reevaluate, you know, what is it that you're busy with. And it takes hard work. And that's what I think is another thing that when we're, you know, the younger generation is coming up, and I have 2 younger sisters as well. One's 17, one's 21, and a 10-year-old niece. And I can tell you that the sheltering that goes into place, you know, like I tell my parents, they're like, my gosh, I was taking the bus at 10 years old to go across the city, and you don't even let them, you know. So the sheltering that happens to the younger generations is not helping them. I don't see this as something helping. I'm so glad that when we were growing up, and, you know, and originally I'm from Russia, so when we were growing up in, like, the Soviet Union state, basically, and, like, although it was safer maybe in some areas, but we were able to go, like, across the city. Literally at 10 years old, we'd go across the big city on our own. We would walk to school on our own. There was no, you know, we would really find our own way. And I think that at the end of the day, like, you need to experiment because, yes, can you also find, like, coaches and mentors to help you? Yes, I'm a huge fan of that. I think we should, but nothing beats hands-on experience. Nothing beats you actually, you know, getting up the courage and curiosity to go and knock on people's doors and saying, listen, I would love to work for you. You know, I would love to do it for free, obviously, you know, like, for volunteer. as much time as you can spend volunteering. I mean, to this day, I do a lot of things for free as well, because it gives me experience as well, right? So aside from our business, like, there's so many things that we deliver as well, free of charge, to learn, to grow, to experiment. I'm telling you, like, it's something that we need to practice continuously. So as young people, I think that you need to be proactive, find the resources. So your parents might not have them, and that's all right. My parents didn't when we moved to the US. I didn't have any advice in that space. But it's about, just being curious and not being afraid. That's another thing. And get away from the laptop and the phone from time to time, right?
True. I love the thing you said about hard work. My father used to say, like, if you want to be gold is valuable because it goes through so much, it's treated with such high intense heat, and that's when it shines and becomes gold. So I think it is in somewhat true that we're sort of afraid of hard work, but if we can sort of start, and again, it's baby steps, start doing something that makes you uncomfortable, but little by little, I think you'll get used to, say, working hard and doing things that you're uncomfortable with, and over a year or two, you'll see such significant benefits. You never know what will happen.
Absolutely, and I think a part of that hard work, again, it builds character. And today, what makes me sad, another topic I really feel passionate about, is that there's so many suicide, mental health cases of young generations of teenagers, because we're so affected by what's happening by the social media, and I really feel for them. I cannot imagine. I'm so glad like Instagram did not exist when I was I don't know, I'd probably be a different person. And I love social media. Like, I think it has a lot of value in technology in general. But at the end of the day, like, these experiments, diving in and kind of being uncomfortable will build you that resilience and that sort of tough skin that you're going to need, especially, in specific areas of work. It's very difficult. It's very competitive. It's not easy. And it's, for those especially who want to go into entrepreneurship or the world of startups, it's not easy. And the biggest part is, and the hardest part is not making the money. You can make money. In this world, you can really monetize in so many different ways. You can make money, you can sell, you can do marketing, you can do business development, you can do your branding and PR. The hardest part is your mindset. And that nobody teaches you. The only way you build that mindset of just resilient, like, just you wake up and there's days you're like, I don't want to move, this is depressing, so many things are happening and I feel so much pressure. But if you have the right mindset, you're going to overcome it. And this is what we're not taught. And because we're sheltered, and I'm not saying, go throw your kids in the tiger's den, but what I'm saying is that give them a little bit of space as well to experiment, and kids need to be curious, they need to want to experiment. And so it's, again, big questions, big problems to solve, absolutely, but I think these small things you count.
True. I mean, we're 6 minutes past our deadline in terms of future of education segment. But finally, what's your say utopian vision for the education system, say, in the next 10 years?
So, listen, I just hope that what I would like to see, and what we're working to also solve as our startup and some of the work that we do, is creating alternative pathways for people. Because what's heartbreaking and why, so I started in education, then I went into the corporate training world and coaching, and now I'm sort of more leaning back towards, because that's where I can make an impact, because I just don't want to see more mid-level to senior level professionals completely disengaged at work, disconnected, dealing with mental health issues because they're so stressed out, not because of the pressure of the work, because they don't enjoy their work. And I'm not saying we all need to enjoy 100% and just be so happy. It's unrealistic, but we need to enjoy what we do. We need to feel that we have a purpose. We need to feel that we have some kind of mission, and we need to align our mission with the company's mission. And that's another disconnect. Companies don't align their mission with the individual. That's how you motivate others.
Sure.
There's very little trust in organizations, etc. So I would love to see an education system where we're focusing on something beyond theory, beyond just the popular trendy jobs that are happening right now, but in fact teaching people how to learn. How do you continue remaining curious? How do you make time for these things? And just well-being, just simple things as just taking time to reflect, self-awareness. If there was any topic that needs to be in every year, in every school, in every classroom, self-awareness. It really starts with that. So I would just love to see a little bit more, beyond making the money and passing the test and creating a business out of education. Like I get it, like business is business, we need to make money, but do it in a more sustainable, in a more human and personalized approach.
Absolutely, that's amazing. Because I'm working in the space education industry at the moment, and I know someone personally who's struggling because of all this, and it's heartbreaking, because when we were growing up, schoolwork was like just schoolwork. We had other things, and now the person I know, they're so stressed out by school. It's the peers, the competition with peers, not just academically. It's more about whether do I look nice as my peers or not. It's such a mess, and I think if we introduced I usually don't like pushing people into something, but I think meditation as a practice should be made mandatory from a very early age, because the world's going to change at such a rapid pace in the next 10 years that if you're not self-aware, if you don't have the right mindset, the suicide rate will only climb and climb and climb.
Yeah, no, meditation is good, and it's funny because I think it was Mark Mencher that posted something about meditation, and I said, and for me, meditation is, yes, you can sit and have that 5 to 10 minutes, or even 2 minutes each morning, but then but I feel like also personally what works for me is, and I feel like it's a meditation sort, is going on that walk. And this is where we kind of had this like discussion on Instagram. He said yes, but meditation sitting down actually has a huge impact. So that actual 10 minutes of just peace and quiet. But to me, it's at the end of the day, I think it's just finding what works for you. And yes, meditation I think is beautiful. But then if on the days that you can't do the 10 minutes, you should be able to. You should make time. But can you just go for a walk? Like, is that it? For me, that's a meditating state, essentially, right? So this is when I really like get in tune with myself, is like walking, or exercising, or whatever it is, right? Prayer for some people. So absolutely, we need to really embed these things, because we're so distracted. And for somebody like myself, even I talk a lot about well-being and I practice it. And there are days when I'm like, how did I get here? I need a moment. I literally need reminders. And another point about well-being in schools, there's a huge push about well-being and mental health, and I think it's brilliant. But we also need to be mindful of how much we are sort of pampering our generation and employees versus, listen, life is hard. There are going to be days where you're going to have a bad day. It does not mean you're necessarily depressed. It does not mean that, life is hard. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need to be hard, but there are situations that it's just not going to be pleasant. Absolutely. But it does not mean we need to go on. So we need to be very mindful, because I think a lot of times, yes, if you sit there and say, I'm depressed, you probably are going, yes, there's clinical depression, there's specific cases, but sometimes we overdo it to where it's becoming this trend almost. And it's like, no, you're just having a bad day. Like, let's find a way to manage that, right? And so we need to also be mindful of because it's a very thin line there.
Yeah, so I did the interview with Mark Metry, and he mentions that instead of meditation, ultimately should be part of your day. It should be, it's not like you sit for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, and then when you get up, it's just all hell breaks loose. That shouldn't be the case. But what will happen, I presume, is when you start training students from a very young age, it will become part of the day, because they're always involved in it, right? And then introducing, say, walking meditation, so that, you incorporate in your daily habits. Consciously eating food is another thing, right? So let's hope that with a little bit of hard work, students don't have to remain in the education system for very long, and they transition to the workforce. Now we already discussed the skill gap, where universities think that their graduates are very employable, but HR departments tell otherwise. And to make matters worse, there is an individual called Dr. Kaifu Lee, and he is so let me read this. So Where the hell does this go? Google. Yeah, so Dr. Kaifu Lee is a venture capitalist who sort of specializes in artificial intelligence. And he is also the co-chair of Artificial Intelligence Council for World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Now, it's, I think, suffice to say that he knows what he's talking about, right? And so according to him, up to 50% of all jobs will either be automated or disrupted by AI in the next in the next decade or so. So the point is, we're kind of paying, say, universities, we're kind of paying an organization to provide us with the knowledge and skills that might not even exist in, say, a decade or so. So the question would be, what should students really do right now to ensure that they remain relevant for the future of work?
Great question. And it's funny, we also have a story with this. So when I was at an event before COVID, and there was universities there, and I forget who it was on the panel, and they were asking. Somebody asked the question like, what is the university doing to prepare you, for the future majors? Like, what are the programs that you're doing? And one of the big universities here, they said, we're going to introduce data analytics and cybersecurity. And then when asked when, and they just kind of went around because by the time universities introduce specific courses like really future driven, they're going to be irrelevant. So as a student, what I would say is I would look into, again, trying to find don't do business administration. Like, first of all, like if you don't know what to do, like do economics, do something else, right? And I mean, I did international relations, by the way, so like I was also like, I just did a major that it is what it is. Because it fit closely to what I liked. But at the end of the day, like it didn't really, like international relations, business administration, these sort of general majors don't really give you that much. So look at majors that might be more future driven or skill based. So something like a skill, where can you learn, where can you differentiate yourself? But in addition to that, you need to first understand if university is for you, number one. First, ask yourself, should I even go to university? That's where the schools come in, right? The advising at schools and the parents and the research you do on your own. So number one, is a 4-year university for you, or should you go to a trade school? What do you really want to do, right? So I think universities are great, but again, and I think majority of people are not the sort of, the entrepreneurs of this world, so they need that 4-year degree, right? But at the end of the day, if you are pursuing a 4-year degree, if you feel that's the right path, make sure you are, again, getting hands-on experience, testing, implementing, practicing, volunteering, join a startup, offer your services, shadow somebody, offer to find opportunities for yourself to experiment. And in addition to that, you need to continuously upskill yourself. So not only getting a 4-year degree, that's hands-on experience. So for example, if you are in marketing, like Chartered Institute of Marketing, you need to look at the programs they have, right? Because they give hands-on experience, certifications, really skill-based, right? Looking at short-term programs as well that you can really get those skills. And in addition to that, what it gives you is the network as well. So network is a huge part. So you need to, you can have the best CV in the world. That's what I tell people. You can have the best CV in the world. If nobody knows about you, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, so basically, we discussed this, how you need to sort of supplement knowledge, theory with skills. And that's what will sort of differentiate you from the competition. Now, we looked at the past, the present, and the future of education system. I mean, if we look at the present situation of the workforce, it's even worse. So there's a report, and when I read it, I was kind of baffled because it was a report by Gallup called The State of the Global Workplace. I'm sure everyone must have read it. So according to them, 10% of all employees are engaged with their jobs and 71% are disengaged. 71%. Can you imagine the untapped human capital every company has to deal with, right? So what are in your professional opinion, what are the causes behind this? And what can companies do to sort of ensure that the situation changes and changes quickly?
Again, there's two responsible parties here. In this case, is the individual, I think, more than the company. So, and the reason individuals, and this is actually the kind of population that I work with, the mid-level to senior level professionals. So most of my clients, I focus a lot on career change and just change journeys in general. And so many people that come to see me, they're looking for some kind of career change. Mm-hmm. And the conversations I'm having, I mean, these are thousands of people at this point, you know? So the conversations I'm having is, I don't even like what I do, but I've been doing it. I'm not sure why, but I realize now I don't want to do it anymore. And it's funny because it happens at mid-level, and that's because you graduate from university with this, you know, excited, you're gonna, you know, let's say you're an engineer or you're a marketeer or you're a finance person, etc. And of course, you'll have to look at generational as well. So we were raised, like, if you're at that mid-level, you're raised by parents, and you're at that kind of sort of bridge between having a job for life, like that one job, to this new world where it's like you can change.
It's acceptable.
It's acceptable to change. So we go to university, we graduate with a degree. It's not about if we like it or not. It's just about making a salary, and then if you have debt
being
or something, being safe, exactly. Right, which we know is not the case. Like, nobody's safe, nobody's protected. We can see this with COVID. A lot of people lost their jobs that were very comfortable and had very nice salaries and positions. So you know, we go to university, that we get that first paycheck, and then we're hooked. We get that first salary, we live beyond our means, and then it's a vicious circle that then. And then we climb up the career ladder because, well, we've been doing it, and I've spent 4 years studying this. I don't want to change. This is what I'm going to do. And then at mid-level to senior level, we kind of get to a certain level and like a title, and we make good money. Maybe we've settled down with our family, etc. We sort of kind of, you know, feel like we've reached some level of success, and we realize that's not enough. Mm-hmm. And this is when you're like, oh, I really need to change. And I joke and I say this is when midlife crisis happens. Exactly. Right? So this usually happens at that time. But so the individual here is, I think, more responsible than as a company, because a company, especially if it's a big company, they cannot possibly give that personalized support to everybody unless they have the external coaches or some kind of development programs that are really intense, right, in that sense. But on the individual side, I think what often happens is that reflection point, that self-awareness and reflection, and it needs to be continuous. Checking in with yourself. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And if I reach to this goal, then what? Mm-hmm. When I talk with the younger students and ask them, well, what do you want to be? I want to own my own company, or I want to be a CEO. Wonderful. And then what? Like, what's the purpose? Is it money? Is it title? Is it prestige? Because there's a lot of ways to make money. There's a lot of ways to reach some kind of
CEO isn't the only way, yeah.
Like, so we need to redefine. Like, we need to stop looking at what is everybody else telling us, and what do you want? Like, what do you want? And then the biggest obstacle, and I always see two things that stop people. One is insecurity. So not feeling the confidence that they can do something, which then takes me back to self-awareness and resilience and experiences in life, right? It's all connected. Or fear of change, which again brings me back to that experience and that exposure and as you're young, because if you change often, you're gonna build that tough skin, and you'll probably find that thing that you really want to focus on. And then also, you know that if you don't want to focus on that thing anymore, it's okay to change, and the world does not fall apart. And everybody who's in their 30s or 40s right now, you can reinvent yourself 2-3 times if you wanted to. But what happens? We get comfortable, and then fear kicks in, and that's an emotion, and we need to recognize it's just an emotion. And to overcome the fear, little steps, small habits, consistency to get to where you want to go.
True, and perfect example for this is, say, Jeff Bezos, right? He was at, peak of his career. He was making decent salary. I've heard it was somewhere near over six figures. And then he decided, okay, I want to start selling books online. Such a massive change from being in finance to selling books online. But I think he did it. So the point I'm trying to make is, it is okay to change even when you're, say, 30, 40, 50. It's fine. Everyone has their, own time. You can change. The world, as you rightly said, isn't going to fall apart, right?
Yeah. And I had a student, and we had a little debate. I was delivering a session to university here, and he said, Elena, everybody talks about, the success stories of Jeff Bezos and these guys. And he said, but that's, they had, whatever it is, or they had, or they're an anomaly, and this is not the norm. And I'm like, yes, these are the guys we hear about, but there's a lot of regular people we don't hear about. You just don't hear about them. So there's a lot more examples out there. Like, it's completely doable. Like, you can do a lot of things. It's just at the end of the day, having the perseverance and that mindset to continue doing and being strategic. So you need to make a change, right? But it doesn't. Some people will do 6 months. Some people will take you 3 years, right? Like change is not easy in general, and it takes a different amount of time for everybody. So.
Absolutely. So, in my sort of, again, recent interview with Jeff Biter, I discussed how, say, 50% of the workforce as of now is made up of millennials. And according to Forbes, by 2025, that number will increase to, say, 75%. So what everyone needs to understand is that millennials and Gen Z are the future, right? There's no avoiding them. But when you read a report by Gallup which says 81% are, say, dissatisfied, immediately everyone sort of places the blame on, say, millennials. Why? Because, and they've sort of given them the label of being lazy, being, wanting constant praise, and being transient in nature. But that's not the case. So what the question would be is that how can say companies ensure that millennials or Gen Z are not only happy with their jobs, but they're thriving at their jobs? And if the companies fail to make any change, what should the workers do, millennials do?
That brings me, I didn't answer your question on the HR, like what should HR keep to or to do to kind of retain that talent? I think that HR also, so what usually, and I think it was Simon Sinek who talks about it, and he's very right. This is what I see in organizations as well. We focus a lot on performance of somebody versus like the trust level or the personality of somebody. So we focus a lot on high performance, and I was actually talking to a friend who comes from an L&D profession, and he said what happens with these high performers is that they're really good, let's say it's sales, and what happens is that because they're good at this area, their bosses will keep pushing like trainings on them, and then what happens is because they're really good at this, but doesn't necessarily they need more of other stuff, like leave them as they are, but there's a lot of other people in your company that might be a little bit quieter, that might not be the higher performance, but they have really high potential. Sure. So if you just invest in them, they might be your high performance in specific areas. But because business is so like metrics and we need to make money, beautiful, I agree, we need to make money, but also there's ways to make money and keep the good talent, because good talent is very difficult to find and it's even harder to keep. So organizations really need to have that personalized approach. They need to work towards that, which is where technology helps. Because of the mass of the number of employees, it's very difficult to have that personalized approach. But like some of the things we're doing with our startup is we're creating those personalized journeys using technology, using an app. So it's almost like there are ways to have that personalized approach to help people figure out their own potential, and also to develop essentially the majority of the workforce versus the top performers. So that's number one. On the millennial side, so are some millennials wanting things very fast? Yes. So there is that patience piece. I think for young people, myself included, I'm not very patient because I'm just always like I want to get things done. And for millennials, I think it's even more. So it's understandable, but things take time. So I think on that side, we need to keep in mind. For HR people, we need to keep in mind that for millennials, the salary is not the number one thing anymore. It's that flexibility, it's that freedom, it's that creating, it's having that purpose. It's beyond that for them. So now we even see less and less millennials are buying homes, for example, compared to before. So even if you have that well-paying job, before you might be, once you kind of get that salary, your next step is to get that house and sort of sell. We don't see that anymore. We're getting married a little bit later. We're having children a little bit later. We're focused more on that sort of finding what we want to do, creating products, creating services. So we need to find different ways. You cannot bring a millennial and kind of keep them behind the desk and expect them to be excited and come to work. You're going to bore them. Yeah. So also the recruitment process needs to change. We focus a lot on things that don't show, we need to focus on potential again, and that is a bigger issue because a lot of HR, a lot of recruitment people don't have the basic psychology skills to evaluate somebody. I'm not talking about a psychology degree, I'm talking about basic human interaction skills, because HR is still one of those positions that is easier to fill than others. You have people that don't have any background in behavior sciences or any of these things, in human interactions and social skills, filling HR roles. So it's almost like they just tick the boxes. And we see this across board. And if you have individuals that are at your forefront of bringing the best talent and all they're looking to do is tick your boxes, there's your problem. You cannot, and it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to recruit talent. And a lot of companies are spending a lot of money recruiting talent by ticking the boxes and not seeing beyond the boxes. And that takes a skill on the HR side.
That's amazing advice. So, I asked you for your utopian vision for education. Similarly, what's your, utopian view for the future of work 10 years from now?
My utopian view for the future of work is I hope that companies, organizations, leaders understand that unless they take care of the personal development of their employees, so having that support. So I think it is an individual job, absolutely, it's 100% your responsibility. But if you want your business to prosper, you need to align your vision of the company with the individual's vision. So it means as a leader, you need to practice what you're preaching. So you cannot be the leader that talks about trust and then you're not transparent with your teams, or talk about empathy and then you're sending your team emails at 2 a.m. and you think that's acceptable, right? Like, schedule them if you need to, like, don't send them because you're sending the wrong message to your team about well-being. So on that side, then we need to also understand that well-being correlates directly with productivity of your staff. And if your staff is 71% disconnected, meaning that you have people that are just sitting there, bodies in front of a computer, you're paying them a lot of money and they're not producing because you didn't take time to figure out what is it that they're good at beyond what you've given them, meaning that you also need to have that safe and the psychological safety in your company so that people do feel like they can open up and share with you if they're not happy in their particular role or if they're struggling and they need further development. So investing in your people in the right way. Right now, we're spending thousands of dollars per employee each year. On average, it's a little bit over $3,000 companies spend on employee development and multinationals. This is the average out there. Some are less, some are more. And with no ROI. We're putting people in a group of 20 people in a group to do soft skills sessions. I'm telling you because I do some of these sessions and I can see the impact is very little. And it's not even about the instructor. Maybe a part of it could be the delivery aspect, the methods used, but a big part of it is that we don't retain information, and you cannot expect people to develop when there are, let's say, 20 people in the room, 10 of them have taken this course before, 10 of them don't know about it. And you want them to walk out there with the same, with an ability to do, it's unrealistic, it's a waste of time and money. So personalized approach, human approach, and giving them support when they need it the most. And with technology, it makes it accessible and affordable for all. So it's about making it a priority instead of keep spending money on other things, or the yoga mats, like the joke, in the Fitbits in the office. Invest in something in that personalized approach. Future is individual, and that is how your business will grow. And we need to understand that if you want your business to grow, you need to invest in the person behind your business.
Absolutely. I think that goes for the education as well. I mean, if universities and school, they want to remain relevant, they need to start providing a very personalized way of learning rather than putting 30-40 people in one classroom and expecting all of them to learn at the same rate and then, show the same result. It's just not realistic, as you said. So you discuss a lot of this on your Instagram. So where can people find you? Obviously, I'll put the links in the description, but if you'd like to, please.
Sure. LinkedIn is my main platform. So Instagram, I have to be there, so I'm kind of there. But LinkedIn is my main platform. So LinkedIn, I do a lot of content on LinkedIn. This is where I really engage with the audience. So LinkedIn is probably the best one.
I'll put that in the description. So finally, I think we're done with the time as well. So what's your final one key piece of advice for, say, students and young professionals?
Self-awareness and experiment.
You've been listening to the SUCCESSology podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcast and share it with a friend. That would help too. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Raj on his personal LinkedIn at Rajdeep Singh, on Instagram at Rajdeep.1997, on Instagram at SUCCESSology.podcast, and on YouTube at SUCCESSology Podcast, helping you create your own definition of success. Make your own path to get there quicker. Until next time, this is the SUCCESSology Podcast signing off.